Welcome back, and it's time now for Media Watch, and for that I'm joined by James Creedon.
Good evening, Annette.
Okay, Superstorm Sandy and the election. Now, we were talking about this last night, and we were sort of joking about the fact that everybody's been asking what impact is it going to have on the election? And sure enough, we're now asking that question ourselves.
Absolutely. It's sort of, everybody's trying to link those two stories, however unlinked they are. They are being linked by questions, by indeed the politicians themselves, who I suppose have to respond to this. And if we look on Slate.com, Romney wants to cut FEMA. That has been one of the top, I suppose, points being made, in particular by Democrats or Democratic supporters today, that last year, during a GOP primary debate in 2011, Romney made a response to a question posed by a journalist about FEMA, which is this federal disaster agency, and budgets the budget for that being cut. Because, of course, Romney is a big proponent of transferring funding to the states where possible and reducing the role of the central federal government. So let's take a listen to that soundbite, which is being picked up on by the media today.
FEMA's about to run out of money, and there are some people who say do it on a case-by-case basis, and some people who say, you know, maybe we're learning a lesson here that the states should take on more of this role. How do you deal with something like that?
Absolutely. Every time you have an occasion to take something from the federal government and send it back to the states, that's the right direction. We should take all of what we're doing at the federal level and say, what are the things we're doing that we don't have to do? And those things we've got to stop doing.
So he's had to defend himself for comments such as that today. And the New York Times indeed responded as early as yesterday evening with this op-ed piece in their paper. A big storm requires big government. In other words, you need the federal government. You need agencies like FEMA to come in. So this obviously is not reflecting well on Mr. Romney at the moment. You also have tweets such as this one from the governor of New Jersey, also badly affected by the storm. President Obama called me today to make sure we had everything we need. I appreciate that type of leadership, which of course contrasts, I think, in particular to Bush during Hurricane Katrina, which wasn't just before an election, it must be said, but he was remembered for not responding very quickly to that. Obama has perhaps learnt that lesson.
I think they all have, actually.
Yes.
Now, there's been a lot of inaccurate reporting due to, and in fact, some of it misleading on the social media, hasn't it?
That's right. Let's take a look at this headline, Annette, on the Poynter Institute's website. That's a journalism institute in the US. Hurricane Sandy tests Twitter's information immune system. Now, what they're talking about there is a social media without the checks and balances of a news organisation or a newsroom. You do have self-appointed curators such as Andy Carvin of NPR, who did spend a lot of the day yesterday verifying or indeed proving that some photos or information were false. But obviously that's not the same as a proper system of checks and balances. But let's take a look at some of the false information that did get through that system. BuzzFeed Politics has picked up on a couple of tweets by a guy called Comfortably Smug on Twitter. Now, he is an unnamed sort of mover and shaker in New York City, followed by a lot of journalists and decision makers. He said that the New York Stock Exchange had been flooded. That was actually untrue. It was retweeted 635 times, picked up by CNN, picked up by the Weather Channel, all of it false. You also had pictures such as this one with sharks kind of, you know, swimming around the streets. Not true. That was also proven to be fake by certain people. I think it was at theatlantic.com, one of their journalists proved that to be fake. And then there's one such as this that I think we know ourselves. We don't need any curator to tell us that Lady Liberty wasn't doing a Marilyn Monroe in it. So the internet, you have to be very careful. And indeed, what some people have been saying at the Poynter Institute is what we see here is proof that this storm basically proves that Twitter is the place to turn for real-time information and analysis during major news events. But you also find an awful lot of hot air and disinformation.
I think you also have to remind people to evacuate the building before they tweet, because there's a bit of a problem there as well.
Absolutely.
The hurricane has also wreaked havoc in the Caribbean, but you wouldn't know that, would you, James?
You wouldn't, indeed. And indeed, this is on the Boston Globe's website, a look at Caribbean deaths and damage from Sandy, which is just a sort of almost a sidebar, really, even though in Haiti, for example, I think at the last count, it's 52 deaths, and that surpasses all of the deaths in the US and Canada. So I suppose the focus very much on the home catastrophe and international media picking up on all of the noise coming out of the US. One thing to finish on, Annette, just you were speaking about people being careful of tweeting or not tweeting when they're in the middle of catastrophe. This girl didn't really realise that. She live tweeted her roof nearly coming off, and here it is. She has a sort of a roof device being held together with a rope, and she has a helmet and a cocktail in her hand. So I think it probably wasn't quite as dramatic as that if she was able to have a cocktail in the middle of the storm and live tweet it.
Well, you wouldn't
For
be.
her.
Yeah, she's a true New York girl, obviously. It should have been a martini.
I think so.
Thanks for that, James
Thanks, Matt.
Creedon. And that's it from Media Watch.